Um, Hi, thank you for being with us tonight. We pre-recorded this interview, and we are very happy to have the director of the movie of this film. And the first question I I have to ask is, what's your motivation for making this movie?
Yeah, thank you for having the film. There were a few moments where I thought about what should I do in order to, like, when should I do the film? A few starting points, I meant. Um, the first starting point was actually when I was editing 10 years ago, 11 years ago, um, my previous big international film, which was Five Broken Cameras. I was sitting in the editing and was working out with the voiceover, and the film was almost finished, and I realized that I'm very happy from how the voiceover turned out to be. I wrote it actually, even though it's a Palestinian story, um, and I felt that it is the tool that I like the most to use in filmmaking. And I thought what other voiceover films I should do next after this film. And immediately at that point, I had this idea that it should be stories of soldiers who died in military service, and mostly I thought about soldiers who have committed suicide. So there was this moment of epiphany, like you say, of inspiration that you just know this is something you need to do, and that sent me to my own personal experiences. Why I thought that the reason I thought of that is my own personal experiences, because when I was 18 or before 18, I didn't want to do my military service. I already knew that I want to become a filmmaker. I studied film in high school, and I was not so politicized. I didn't know much about Palestinians, for instance, and it was the 90s. We had some hard times, the failure of the Oslo agreements, a lot of bombing attacks in our teenage years, and so I was not. I didn't have that much knowledge of exactly the Palestinian side of the story, um, but I knew where I lived, and I understood the kind of propaganda place that I was brought up into, which I automatically felt against. I didn't like all these heroic stories and a lot of morbid stories and a lot of um, like myths that I didn't feel connected to, that you see also in Innocence. And that what led me to have a very clear thinking that I don't want to become a soldier and not a combatant. I managed to avoid being combatant because I'm an orphan from a father. So I was able to to get to a place that is a close to home unit, like is mentioned in the film.
Mm-hmm.
And when I enrolled to the military, I was thinking, okay, I have to do it. It's the law, but if it really turns to be bad, then I'll just go out, and I will try to do something very positive, like apply to journalistic newspaper that the military has, or the military radio. And I've applied to many of these places, wrote letters, so on. And then nothing of it really worked out. When I enrolled, I understood what a huge mistake I've done. It was such an awful place. And it was not awful place. I mean, it's awful place on many levels. First of all, you're taken probably against your will, against who you are, to do a lot of these stuff that you don't feel connected to, all the little missions. But it's also you're under a very hierarchical system, and you're being told orders. But the most is that you really feel this is all a lie. You don't feel you're a part of a real defensive military. And I'm not saying that there's no defensive, that military is not doing also defensive things, but you really feel that I felt that the military is also a very racist atmosphere in it, and a very corrupted feeling, and this just a lot of hatred speeches, a lot of a feeling that you're exploited as a person when you're there, that because you have to do it, you should be exploited. It's when you go to a military to be a combatant, you're treated a little bit better. When you're not a little bit, much better actually, and depending on which unit. When you go to a non-combatant unit, like I was, like Adam was in the film, you're really treated like garbage. Like you're not good enough to be a combatant. You just have to do it, and they're gonna put you in wherever. So so very fast I started to want to go out because I felt this doesn't suit me. And then there's another level that is when you're giving the gun for the first time, which is what I've also tried to recreate in the film, and you're starting to do the practice in the weapon, and then you really, it hits you what the meaning of what you're doing. And I didn't feel this is for a good purpose. I didn't feel that. It was my intuition back then. I didn't feel like I'm fighting for the protection of my country. I felt at that point that I'm going to be sent to do things that I don't trust those who send me. And I was not a combatant even, but still just touching the weapon, hearing the sounds, having all the people around me so excited from holding the guns, it felt very decadent and very dystopian for me. And really, I was in big pain around that time. And then I started to try and go out to go to a psychologist, because there's no way out for you out of the military through either you refuse and then you go to prison, and I almost got to prison, or you try to go to a psychologist. You're depressed. It's easy to, you think it's going to be easy to go out because you're so depressed. It's very hard to get to the psychologist. There are a lot of people who are in bad shape at that point. And when you do go in, they don't really, they know, they suspect that you're just trying to go out, and they want to try to keep you in. So they don't really help you at all.
And you feel like, sorry.
Yeah.
And you feel like that a feel of shame from outside if you leave the mandatory military. You have scare about if you go out, then you are shame on you. There is shame on you.
Yes, there is a big social, and as a young man, you're gonna think about, you know, everything, like the girls, the what kind of everybody's gonna ask you what kind of work you're gonna do. There were not internet back then, so the commanders are telling you crazy lies that you're gonna lose your license, you're not gonna be able to study in university, and a lot of crazy stuff that are just to put you in. So you're under a lot of, and the family, in my case, my family didn't support me. So there's a lot of different kinds of pressures, and they are true actually, because when I actually didn't go out from the military service, I remember I dated a girl, for instance, and she discovered I didn't do military service, and I was the end of it. So these stuff, less and less today, but they exist. But in my time, there were even more. So, you know, to make the story short, even going into the psychologist at one point, telling him, I'm going to kill myself. I'm so depressed. I don't want to be here. And he tells you, just do it. Or something like that. Not really in these words, but something like, I don't care.